You're watching SA Today here on SABC News. The Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation has called on the public to open their hearts and their wallets to help fight gender-based violence and rally behind women. Exactly a week ago, 28-year-old Tshegofatso Pule's body was found hanging from a tree in Roodepoort. She was 8 months pregnant at the time of her murder. Yesterday, a 42-year-old woman from Eersterust was stabbed to death and her body was mutilated, apparently by her boyfriend, was one of the last people who saw her alive. These victims are among many women who've been killed in South Africa over the past week. Now, joining us via Skype from the Centre for the Study of Violence, we are now joined by Nomfundo Mogapi, who is the Executive Director there. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Afternoon. Thank you for having me.
I mean, we talk about all these incidents, and I mean, really, it's quite unfathomable, all the gender-based violence incidents that we're seeing again, really, in this country. And I mean, I talk about two incidents, and one that we've just been covering today as well, of a young lady, Saneli Siwe Mfaba in Dobsonville, whose body was dumped there. We saw the family outside Roodepoort Magistrates Court. I mean, we clearly, very clearly have a big issue here on our hands in South Africa in terms of gender-based violence. But what I want to ask you is what really is the underlying issue? I mean, when something explodes like this, there's something underneath that has caused this explosion and this problem that we're now faced with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a real crisis in our country, this issue of gender-based violence. And actually, we've been saying that it has now become a pandemic in our country, just like the COVID-19. It's become a shadow pandemic, and we have to treat it like that. We have been encouraged by a sense of urgency and the sense of action that we have been seeing in relation to COVID-19. We have learned that as a society, we are able to gather together, have solidarity, and fight the things that we see as a threat to our society. And we are calling for us as a society to use that same energy, that same solidarity in order to deal with gender and based violence in this society.
You know, Sis Nomfundo, one of the things that concerns me is, you know, we'll have a spate of killings of young ladies or, you know, of children, and we'll see the uproar maybe on social media. We'll see the hashtags. We'll see all of these things that, you know, we do when we're upset. But then it goes quiet again, and then it happens all over again. It's like a cycle that never ends. What are we supposed to do as a society? And I know that there've been calls asking men to change their own behaviors, because previously, you know, it was the women that were told to, you know, no, don't walk during certain hours, wear this, don't wear that. But really, what are we supposed to do? You know, I mean, we can show the outrage and all of that, but then, you know, it seems to happen over and over again.
I'm really glad that you've said that, because we've been clear that we need to have sustained action towards GBV. Again, I want to come back to what we've been saying as South Africa, to say the way we've dealt with pandemic, we can learn something from it. If you can listen, we are almost in day 70-something since the pandemic had started. On a daily basis, we've been hearing about COVID-19. We've been hearing messages constantly. We've been getting daily stats from our government in relation to how we are actually dealing with it. And what we've learned is that if we are going to make collective change in our society, there has to be a constant, systemic way of communicating to the public about the importance of dealing with these issues. This tendency of our society to see a few cases happening and then waking up and panicking around them, then we go to sleep again, we raise awareness again, then we go to sleep again. It really requires a continuous effort for us to be able to engage with this. It requires leadership. We've seen through COVID-19 that there has been collective leadership. It's not just been the president speaking against this. We have seen leaders across all sectors of society saying we are going to support COVID-19. And most interestingly, I mean, what we have been saying, and we've been hearing the Department of Health and other ministers saying, is that COVID is not a health issue. It's a social issue. It's a mindset issue. And they have sent messages to shift the mindset of the people of a society. And they have been exemplary. We've seen them wear masks to say this is what we are doing to protect society. Let us see that kind of leadership in relation to GBV. What they say outside in condoning GBV, let it be seen in their personal lives and in their homes, in how they lead, in how they engage with women. Maybe if we do that and have this sustained effort, we can be able to deal with GBV. Let's go to schools. We've been teaching our children. I mean, the classrooms have completely changed to try and align with COVID-19. Let us do the same thing with SGBV. It cannot just be sporadic responses because we are panicking.
Exactly. Now, you talk about going into schools and, teaching, perhaps young girls. I wonder, though, and maybe you can correct me here, would it not be the right thing to do, perhaps, to call on government, the private sector, perhaps to empower a woman? Because, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, when women are empowered and they have their own finances, are they not more likely to leave a relationship that is heading towards, fatality, that is abusive and so forth? I mean, not to say that, a woman who isn't empowered can't be abused, but surely there is something in empowering a woman that could possibly lead, to less of these sort of circumstances. As sometimes you find women staying in relationships because perhaps it's the breadwinner that's abusing them physically and so forth, and ultimately we see what we end up seeing.
Look, I mean, definitely there is a point, and we've been doing a lot of work in empowering women, but we cannot put the burden of fighting the scourge on the shoulders of the women. We have to begin to talk to the men in our society. We have to begin to talk to them about changing their mindset. It's been worrying for us that you see men who perpetuate violence in their homes go in public and say we're speaking against gender-based violence. But they do the same thing. Let us begin to say, what is wrong? There is something horribly wrong in our society and with the mindset of the men in our society. How do we then begin to shift that mindset? How do we begin to deal with the men? Let the burden of stopping SGBV be in the shoulders of the men, not on the shoulders of the women. It's like telling someone who has money that, oh no, you are rich, so because you are rich, become less rich so that people don't mug you. No. Let us deal with the people who are perpetrating violence. Let us deal with the silencing culture in our society, because most of the women that we say stay usually go and talk to families, they talk to churches, because we've learned women don't go to the police anymore. They go to community structures, but there is a culture of silencing in our society that makes it so difficult for women to actually go out. There is a culture that does not validate women's experience. Actually, a lot of women who are feeling abused are being made to doubt themselves, even when they say, I feel abused, because in a society there is this sense that a perpetrator looks a certain way. There are certain men who cannot be perpetrators because of how they look outside. So the problematizing of the issue and our focus has to, the women must be supported, they must get counseling, they must be protected. But the shifting needs to happen to the men, and we have to begin to deal with them.
And organizations like your own, how can women reach out to you, when they're feeling like they're in situations that, they possibly can't get out of? And what do organizations like yours really do in terms of helping with the scourge of gender-based violence?
So people can definitely call CSVR at 011-403-5650. But also what we've been realizing is that most of the women, especially during this period where there is still a level of lockdown, are struggling to be able to call us. So we are also working with community-based organizations that are able to screen and realize where there is a problem. And we're asking women to even just send SMSs and alerts so that they can be able to be reached. But we are asking the society in South Africa to say that if you can know that there is something wrong, in the next door, raise an alert, do something as a society. Let us all take the responsibility. You know, in the olden days, we would literally, and to go to that man and say, we can see what you are doing. You are abusing this woman. We will not be able to allow it. It has to be that collective voice that makes women feel that they can actually speak up without fearing for their lives.
All right, Sis Nomfundo Mogapi, it's been a pleasure having you here with us on SA Today. Thank you so much for giving us your time.